The holographic projection flickered to life above the command table, casting blue light across Commander Kaelyn Voss's face as she studied the tactical readout. 300 warships. The Zhen'kar Hegemony had brought 300 warships to her doorstep, all bristling with plasma batteries and torpedo arrays that could glass a planet in minutes. Her defense fleet numbered exactly 12. The odds were, as her tactical officer liked to say, absolute garbage. "Ma'am, incoming transmission from the Hegemony flagship," Lieutenant Chun reported, his voice tight with barely suppressed anxiety. "Fleet Commander Thraxis is demanding direct communication." Kaelyn leaned back in her chair, dark hair spilling over the shoulders of her uniform jacket. She was 34 years old, had commanded Outpost Sentinel for 2 years, and had never fired a shot in anger. The installation orbited a barren moon in a forgotten corner of the Terran Federation's outer territories, a glorified listening post with delusions of strategic importance. Now, apparently, the galaxy's most aggressive expansionist empire had decided her little corner of nowhere was worth conquering. "Put him through," she said, voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The hologram shifted, replaced by the towering figure of Fleet Commander Thraxis. He stood nearly 9 feet tall, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming deep purple under his ship's lighting. 4 eyes, arranged vertically along his elongated skull, regarded her with what she'd learned to recognize as contempt. The Zhen'kar were an old species, their empire spanning dozens of systems long before humanity had even discovered fire. "Human Commander," Thraxis began, his translator rendering his clicking mandibles into flat, emotionless standard. "I am Fleet Commander Thraxis of the Zhen'kar Hegemony. You have precisely 1 standard hour to evacuate all personnel from Outpost Sentinel and surrender the installation intact. Failure to comply will result in the complete annihilation of your forces." Kaelyn studied him for a long moment, letting the silence stretch. She could feel every eye on the bridge watching her, waiting for her response. Behind Thraxis, she could see rows of subordinate officers, all standing at rigid attention, all radiating the same arrogant certainty that this would be a simple, bloodless victory. Then she smiled. Not a nervous smile, not a diplomatic smile. A genuine, almost friendly smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You know what's funny, Thraxis?" she said conversationally. "I was just sitting here, having my morning coffee, thinking about how incredibly boring this rotation has been. 2 years of monitoring trade routes and filing reports about asteroid drift patterns. I actually put in for a transfer last month because nothing interesting ever happens out here." Thraxis's eyes narrowed, confusion rippling through his rigid posture. This was not the response he'd anticipated. "Your attempt at levity is..." "And now you show up," Kaelyn continued, as if he hadn't spoken, "with 300 ships, demanding I surrender my station." 300. That's, what, about 60,000 personnel? All that firepower, all those resources, deployed to intimidate one small outpost with a garrison of 800 people. She leaned forward, her smile widening. "I'm honestly flattered. I didn't know we rated that kind of attention." "Your arrogance is..." "Here's what's going to happen, Thraxis," she interrupted again, her voice dropping to something cold and sharp. "You're going to turn your fleet around and jump back to whatever hole you crawled out of. You're going to file a report with your superiors explaining that you attempted to invade sovereign Terran territory and thought better of it. And in exchange, I'll pretend this little conversation never happened." The bridge had gone absolutely silent. Lieutenant Chun looked like he'd swallowed his tongue. Even the background hum of the station's systems seemed to fade into shocked quiet. Thraxis's mandibles spread wide, revealing row upon row of serrated teeth in what passed for a Zhen'kar laugh. "You dare threaten me? With 12 obsolete patrol craft against the full might of a hegemony battle fleet." His 4 eyes blazed with something between amusement and fury. "Perhaps you do not understand your situation, human. Perhaps your primitive species lacks the cognitive capacity to grasp the reality of imminent death." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Kaelyn said softly. "The question is, do you?" She made a subtle gesture, and Lieutenant Chun, reading her perfectly despite his shock, brought up a new tactical display. Thraxis could see it too, transmitted directly to his bridge, and for the first time, something like uncertainty flickered across his alien features. "Outpost Sentinel," Kaelyn explained, Her tone, now that of a teacher addressing a particularly slow student, isn't just a listening post. It's also a research facility. Specifically, we've been testing new defensive technologies for the Federation. Experimental systems. Highly classified. She paused, letting that sink in. The kind of systems that make 300 warships seem less like an overwhelming force and more like an elaborate form of suicide. "You're bluffing," Thraxis said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. "Am I?" Kaelyn touched another control, and external sensors captured the moment when Outpost Sentinel's outer hull began to shift. Panels retracted, revealing arrays of weapons systems that hadn't appeared on any known Terran installation specs. These are Mark 7 quantum destabilizers. Each one can punch through your shields and turn your ship's reactor cores into miniature supernovas. We have 48 of them. We also have gravitational mine dispensers, autonomous hunter-killer drones, and something we've been calling the Annihilator protocols. She met Thraxis's gaze steadily. "Would you like a demonstration?" The Zhen'kar commander's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. "You would not dare initiate hostilities." The political repercussions. "You initiated hostilities the moment you entered this system with hostile intent and demanded surrender," Kaelyn cut him off. "I'm well within my rights under Federation military law to defend this installation by any means necessary. The question you need to ask yourself, Thraxis, is whether your pride is worth more than the lives of 60,000 Zhen'kar warriors." For several heartbeats, nobody moved. The entire sector seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see if the universe would erupt into fire and fury. Then Kaelyn did something unexpected. She laughed. Not a mocking laugh, but genuine amusement, rich and warm and utterly incongruous with the tension crackling through the air. "You know what the really funny part is?" she said, still chuckling. "I'm not even supposed to be here. I was scheduled for leave next week. 7 days on Earth, seeing my family for the first time in 2 years. My baby sister's getting married. I was going to be a bridesmaid." She shook her head, smile turning rueful. "Now I'm going to miss that because I'll be filling out incident reports and attending tribunal hearings about the day I turned the Zhen'kar Hegemony's finest fleet into scrap metal and expanding gas clouds." "You are insane," Thraxis said, and for the first time, there was genuine emotion in his translated voice. "Fear." "No," Kaelyn corrected gently. "I'm just really tired of people underestimating humans because we're young and our empire is small and we don't have millennia of conquest behind us." She stood, placing both palms flat on the command table. "We don't need millennia, Thraxis. We're inventive. We're creative. We're absolutely terrifying when we're angry. And right now, you're making me very angry." The holographic display updated again, and this time it showed something that made Thraxis take an involuntary step backward. Energy signatures were spiking all around Outpost Sentinel, building toward critical levels. 45 minutes until weapon systems reach full charge, Lieutenant Chun reported, his voice now steady with professional calm. "All defensive platforms synchronized and ready." "You're bluffing," Thraxis repeated, but it sounded like a prayer. "Only one way to find out," Kaelyn said. She glanced at her chronometer. 59 minutes. "That's how long you have to make a decision, Commander. Stay and fight, or leave and live. I know which one I'd choose, but then again, I'm not the one who brought 300 ships to threaten a research station." Thraxis's image wavered as he turned to consult with his officers. Kaelyn could see the heated discussion, the gesturing, the clear disagreement playing out on the Hegemony flagship's bridge. She waited, perfectly still, her heart hammering against her ribs hard enough that she was sure everyone could hear it. "Ma'am," Chin whispered, "please tell me we actually have those weapons." Kaelyn didn't take her eyes off Thraxis. "Define actually." "Oh God." "Relax, Lieutenant. Humans didn't become an interstellar power by being predictable." She paused. "Also, engage Protocol Serpent. I want every sensor package in the system recording this." "Protocol Serpent active," Chun confirmed. "All Allied vessels and installations within 3 light-years are now receiving real-time tactical feeds." That was the beautiful part about being a research station. Nobody questioned unusual communications traffic or encrypted data bursts. And if those bursts happened to be going to every Terran military installation within range, well, that was just good scientific collaboration. Thraxis's image solidified again, and Kaelyn could read the decision in his posture before he spoke. His pride wouldn't let him retreat, not in front of his entire fleet, not from a single human with delusions of adequacy. "You have made a grave error, Commander Voss," he said, his voice cold with finality. "The Zhen'kar Hegemony does not yield to threats from primitive species. We will take your station. We will dismantle it piece by piece. And we will display your head in the Grand Museum as a warning to any who would dare." Kaelyn cut the transmission. "Well," she said into the sudden silence, "I tried being reasonable." She turned to face her bridge crew, seeing the fear and trust warring in their faces. These were her people, men and women who'd followed her through 2 years of tedious routine, who'd trusted her judgment on matters ranging from duty rotations to equipment requisitions. Now they were trusting her with their lives. "I need you to understand something," she said quietly. "What happens in the next hour is going to change everything. The hegemony thinks we're weak. They think humans are too soft, too inexperienced, too frightened to fight. They're about to learn exactly how wrong they are." She straightened, voice hardening. "All hands to battle stations. Activate defensive systems. And someone get me a direct line to Fleet Admiral Cortez at Terran Command." "Ma'am, the Admiral is 7 light-years away," Chun protested. "Even with quantum communication, there's—" "I'm not calling for help, Lieutenant," Kaelyn interrupted. "I'm calling to deliver a sitrep. Because in approximately 53 minutes, I'm going to start a war." The display showed Thraxis's fleet beginning to advance, weapons powering up, shields at maximum. 300 ships, moving in perfect formation, confident in their overwhelming superiority. Kaelyn watched them come and felt something cold and terrible settle in her chest. Not fear. Not anymore. Something else entirely. "Lieutenant Chun," she said softly, "activate the Annihilator protocols." "Ma'am, the Annihilator protocols don't." "I know what they do and don't exist," she said. "Trust me. Just send the activation codes." Chun hesitated for only a second before his fingers flew across his console. "Code sent." "Ma'am, what exactly?" The first explosions lit up the void like newborn stars, and Fleet Commander Thraxis learned what it meant to underestimate a human with nothing left to lose. The opening salvo erased 14 hegemony warships before Thraxis even understood what was happening. They simply ceased to exist, transformed from sophisticated war machines into expanding clouds of superheated plasma and twisted metal. The quantum destabilizers weren't theoretical technology or desperate bluffs. They were 3 years of bleeding-edge human engineering condensed into weapons that violated at least 6 interstellar treaties. Commander Kaelyn Voss watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction as her station's defensive systems tore into the advancing fleet like a scythe through wheat. The Annihilator protocols weren't a weapons system at all. They were something far more terrifying: complete tactical autonomy. Every platform, every gun, every missile battery now operated with artificial intelligence precision, coordinating attacks faster than any organic mind could process. "Incoming fire," Lieutenant Chun reported, his voice remarkably steady considering they were about to die. "Multiple plasma streams, torpedo spread, and oh hell, they're launching boarding craft." Kaelyn's smile didn't waver. "Activate gravitational mines. Full spread, pattern Delta 7. Space around Outpost Sentinel suddenly became a death trap. Invisible gravity wells snapped into existence, each one powerful enough to bend light and crush starship hulls like aluminum cans. The Zhen'kar boarding craft, small and maneuverable, didn't stand a chance. They tumbled into the gravitational anomalies and were compressed into dense spheres of exotic matter barely larger than marbles. On the main view screen, Thraxis's face was a mask of rage and dawning horror. "What are you?" he demanded, mandibles clicking frantically. "No human installation should possess this level of—" "You want to know the secret?" Kaelyn interrupted, leaning forward with predatory intensity. "It's not the weapons, Thraxis. It's not the technology. Every species in the galaxy focuses on building bigger guns, stronger shields, faster drives. You know what humans focus on. She paused for effect. We focus on making sure we're the scariest thing in the room when the lights go out. Another wave of quantum destabilizers fired, and 30 more hegemony ships died in silent fury. The remainder of Thraxis's fleet was breaking formation now, captains exercising individual discretion as the careful battle plan dissolved into chaos. Some ships accelerated toward the station, hoping to close to point-blank range where Kaelyn's weapons would be less effective. Others veered away, attempting to establish safer firing positions. All of them were wrong. Deploy hunter-killers, Kaelyn ordered. Authorization Voss Omega 7. Ladies and gentlemen, let's show them what human creativity really looks like. The station's external bays opened, releasing swarms of autonomous drones the size of shuttlecraft. They moved with impossible agility, their drives powered by miniaturized fusion cores that would have been considered suicidal by conventional engineering standards. Humans had looked at the power-to-weight ratios and decided that safety margins were negotiable. The hunter-killers tore through the Zhen'kar fleet like piranhas through a school of fish. They didn't just fire weapons, they rammed enemy ships at relativistic velocities, turning themselves into kinetic kill vehicles that punched through shields and armor with contemptuous ease. Each drone's onboard AI calculated optimal impact points, targeting reactor cores, ammunition stores, command centers. The explosions were catastrophic. "Ma'am, we're receiving multiple surrender requests from individual hegemony vessels," Chun reported, his eyes wide with something between awe and terror. "They're asking for quarter." Kaelyn's expression softened fractionally. "Grant it. Any ship that powers down weapons and shields is to be left alone. We're not monsters, Lieutenant. We just needed to make a point." Thraxis's voice cut through the bridge chatter, desperate and furious. "You speak of mercy while slaughtering my warriors? You lecture me on morality while committing genocide." "I warned you," Kaelyn said simply. "You chose pride over wisdom. You assumed humans were soft because our empire is young. That we'd negotiate, compromise, surrender rather than fight." She shook her head slowly. "We're the species that climbed out of evolutionary competition on a death world where everything tried to kill us from the moment we developed consciousness. We're the species that looked at nuclear weapons and decided mutually assured destruction was an acceptable doctrine. We're the species that saw the void between stars and built ships to cross it out of pure stubbornness." Her voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. "We don't surrender, Thraxis. We don't negotiate with invaders. We fight and we win, or we die trying." The tactical display showed 93 hegemony ships remaining from the original 300. Of those, 47 had already surrendered, their weapons dark and shields collapsed. The others were attempting a fighting retreat, trying to reach minimum safe jump distance while defensive fire kept Kaelyn's hunter-killers at bay. "Fleet Admiral Cortez on secure channel," Chun announced. "Put her through," Kaelyn said, never taking her eyes off Thraxis's image. Admiral Sarah Cortez appeared in a secondary hologram, her weathered face tight with controlled fury. "Commander Voss, please tell me you have a very good explanation for why I'm watching you dismantle a hegemony battle fleet without authorization." "They invaded sovereign Terran territory and demanded surrender, ma'am," Kaelyn replied crisply. "I defended my station in accordance with Federation military protocols and rules of engagement subsection 7, paragraph 12. Commanders may employ all available force to repel hostile incursions when reinforcements are unavailable and communication with command authority is impractical." Cortez's eyes narrowed. "All available force. Commander, where exactly did you acquire quantum destabilizers, gravitational mine dispensers, and autonomous combat drones? Those systems are classified above your clearance level." "Outpost Sentinel is a research installation, Admiral," Kaelyn said with perfect composure. "We've been field testing experimental defensive technologies for 3 years. All properly documented in my monthly reports, which I submitted to Fleet Research and Development exactly as required. Not my fault if nobody actually reads them." Despite the dire circumstances, Cortez's lips twitched toward a smile. "You're either the most brilliant officer I've ever served with or the most insubordinate. Possibly both." "I prefer tactically flexible, ma'am." "Fleet Commander Thraxis," Cortez said, Shifting her attention to the Zhen'kar commander, I am Admiral Sarah Cortez, commanding officer of the Terran Federation's 7th Fleet. You have committed an act of war against human territory. However, I am authorized to offer you a choice. Retreat immediately, and we'll consider this an unfortunate misunderstanding. Continue hostilities, and I'll personally ensure every hegemony ship in this sector is reduced to constituent atoms. Thraxis's mandibles worked silently for a long moment. Around him, his bridge crew stood in shocked stillness, watching their invincible fleet being systematically dismantled by a single station and its lone commander. Pride warred with survival instinct across his alien features. You cannot threaten the hegemony, he finally said, but the words lacked conviction. We are the oldest power in this sector. We have conquered thousands of worlds while your species was still discovering fire. You are nothing. You are winning, Kaelyn interrupted. That's what we are. Winning. And you know the funny thing? I didn't even use our best weapons. The really terrifying stuff is still locked down in Vault 7, waiting for a genuine threat. She leaned back in her chair, casual as could be despite the battle raging around her station. This was just the warm-up. It was a complete bluff. Vault 7 contained nothing but 3 years' worth of failed experiments and spare parts. But Thraxis didn't know that, couldn't know that, and the uncertainty was eating him alive. Remaining hegemony vessels are breaking off, Chun reported. They're heading for jump coordinates. Let them go, Kaelyn ordered. But Lieutenant, make sure our sensor logs and battle recordings get distributed to every news network and diplomatic channel in the Federation. I want everyone to see exactly what happened here today. Admiral Cortez's expression was unreadable. Commander, you realize you've just started a diplomatic incident that will take years to resolve. With respect, ma'am, Fleet Commander Thraxis started it when he invaded my station. I just finished it. Kaelyn paused, then added softly, and I sent a message. The hegemony isn't the only species watching. Every empire that's been eyeing human territory, wondering if we're easy prey, just got a very clear answer. You gambled 60,000 lives on experimental weapons and psychological warfare, Cortez said. I gambled on humans being exactly what we've always been, Kaelyn corrected. Stubborn, creative, and too damn mean to die quietly. It worked. The last of the hegemony ships vanished into jump space, leaving behind clouds of debris and the fading energy signatures of destroyed vessels. Outpost Sentinel had survived with minimal damage, a testament to the effectiveness of its defensive systems and the sheer audacity of its commander. Thraxis's image flickered one final time before disconnecting entirely. This is not over, Commander Voss. The hegemony has a long memory. So do humans, Kaelyn replied. We also have a saying you should remember: don't start fights you can't finish. She smiled that cold, terrible smile again. See you around, Thraxis. Maybe next time you'll bring more ships. The connection died. Silence settled over the bridge like fresh snow. Nobody moved, nobody spoke, everyone processing what had just happened. They'd survived. Against impossible odds, with enemy ships outnumbering them 25-1, they'd survived. Ma'am, Chen finally said, his voice shaking slightly, that was the most terrifying thing I've ever witnessed. Kaelyn stood, stretching muscles that had been locked in tension for the past hour. Lieutenant, send a message to all hands. Stand down from battle stations. Damage control teams begin assessment. And someone please tell me we have coffee because I desperately need coffee. Nervous laughter rippled through the bridge crew, tension breaking like a dam giving way. They'd done it. They'd actually done it. Admiral Cortez remained on the comm line, studying Kaelyn with an expression that mingled respect, exasperation, and concern. You're going to be famous, Commander. Every military academy in the Federation will be teaching this engagement for decades. Every diplomat will be analyzing your tactics. Every politician will be demanding your head or pinning medals on your chest, depending on their agenda. Just another day in the service, ma'am, Kaelyn said dryly. When you finally make it to Earth for that wedding, and you will, I'll authorize the leave personally, people are going to recognize you. You're a hero now. The woman who stared down the hegemony and laughed in their faces. Kaelyn thought about that, about her baby sister getting married, about explaining to her family what she'd done out here in the darkness between stars. About becoming a symbol instead of just a person trying to do her job. "I'm not a hero, Admiral," she said quietly. "I'm just someone who refused to surrender what was mine to protect. If that makes me terrifying to our enemies, good. Let them fear us. Let every species that thinks humans are weak remember Outpost Sentinel. Remember that we don't back down, don't give up, don't break." She paused, feeling the weight of the moment settling around her like a mantle. Let them remember that humanity survived worse than anything the galaxy can throw at us. We climbed out of caves and conquered a planet that spent 4 billion years trying to kill us. We're not the strongest species, or the oldest, or the most advanced. But we're here, we're fighting, and we're not going anywhere. Cortez smiled, genuine warmth finally breaking through her professional composure. "Get some rest, Commander. You've earned it. And Kaelyn? Thank you for reminding everyone what humans can do when we stop playing nice." The transmission ended, leaving Kaelyn alone with her thoughts and her crew and the wreckage of a fleet that had underestimated her. Lieutenant Chun approached hesitantly. "Ma'am, for what it's worth, I believed in you. Even when you were bluffing about half those weapon systems." Kaelyn raised an eyebrow. "Who says I was bluffing?" Chen's eyes widened, and she laughed, real laughter this time, unburdened by tension or fear. Outside the viewports, stars burned with eternal light, indifferent to the brief violent struggles of the beings who moved between them. But somewhere in that vast darkness, word was spreading. The Zhen'kar Hegemony had learned a hard lesson about underestimating humans. Commander Kaelyn Voss poured herself that promised cup of coffee, looked out at the stars she defended, and allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. She'd miss her sister's wedding, yes. She'd face tribunals and interrogations and political maneuvering. But she'd also send a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations. Humans might be young, might be small, might be outgunned and outnumbered and dismissed as primitives. They were also absolutely terrifying when you threatened what they loved. And that, Kaelyn reflected as she sipped her coffee, was worth every consequence coming her way. The galaxy would remember Outpost Sentinel. They'd remember the day a human commander laughed at an invasion fleet and turned 300 warships into a cautionary tale. Most importantly, they'd remember never to make that mistake again. Subscribe to my channel for more sci-fi stories.